Do you think Elon Musk saved social media?
I think 100%. I think
agree.
he saves free speech. I think, without that, and again, I'm a guy that's been on there for a long time, right? I had a pretty big following before we ever got into politics. We were, from the TV show, The Apprentice or whatever, and I always did my own. And I was one of the early guys to talk about like the censorship thing before people really saw what was going on. And I'm like, wait a second. The second I got into politics, I was getting, let's call it 5,000 retweets a post. They're like, well, what's different? It's like, well, I got 5. They're like, well, it's the same. I go, no, 5, like single digit, like 5, 5, like 5 retweets. Like, so I saw what was going on. I saw how biased it was, started calling it out. And, honestly, I think without it this last time, you wouldn't have gotten you saw it even in 2020, Hunter Biden laptop, 17% of the public were like, and I know enough about that. I wouldn't have even voted for him. But that's the difference between an election and not. Now, I'm sort of glad it worked out this way, even though we went through sort of 4 years of hell with the lawfare and the nonsense and the continued lawsuits and, all of that, because now we had a chance to start over with knowledge, right? My father got into Washington, D.C. in 16. His first night in the White House was his first night ever in Washington, D.C. So it's like you're starting from scratch. You don't know anyone. You don't know who the guys you can trust are. There's so many people that have the R next to their name, and they're like, okay, they're going to do what we ask. It's not at all true. Yeah. So now with that 4-year hiatus, you saw who's trustworthy. You saw who's going to actually execute. You see who's going to stick around for you, and they will execute now on the mandate that my father was given by the American people. That to me is super critical. Had we just sort of rolled over, in 2020, it'd be the same guys kicking the can down the road. I think we have an opportunity to do something that's just fundamentally transformative to government, bringing the people into it. I think what Elon's doing, with Doge on that is amazing. But I think without that, without X, True Social, these kinds of things, with that continued censorship that we saw from the other major social platforms, the real stuff, the real facts would have never gotten out there. I mean, absolutely. You saw with Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, you're like, I mean, these didn't even seem like serious people to me at times. And by the way, the media even agreed with that like 6 months before she sort of took over in a coup. Yeah. She went from like, this is the worst VP ever, she's terrible at speaking, to like, look at how great it is. We get to have the first XYZ. It was insane, but like, because of the unbiased nature of it, and both sides were very present, but because both people got to see both sides of the story for the first time in a long time, I think they were able to actually come to a decision that made sense instead of a decision that was insane.
Absolutely, because you had traditional media against you, you had the legal system against you, but the alternative media, I think, is what really saved you guys. Right?
100%. You saw it, and you could see it wasn't even what happened there; it's what didn't happen there. When my father does 3.5 hours on Rogan impromptu, people are like, "Oh wow, it was sort of interesting listening to it, and watching him go into the detail of like stuff that happened in the Civil War and why that was like. It was like, oh, there's a lot of depth here that you just wouldn't see in conventional media. And then watching Kamala Harris have the opportunity to do it and also turn it down was equally telling. Yeah, because it's like there was no depth there. There was nothing beyond sort of the teleprompted sound bites. I'm not saying she should have done it. It was probably the right decision for her not to do it.
You think so?
Because I think she would have failed miserably. I mean, you see the speeches, you see the interviews. I mean, she couldn't do 15 minutes, 20 minutes with Bret Baier asking the same questions that she'd been asked in like the 3 other interviews that she did in the month prior. Yeah. It's like nothing was a surprise. Like if you still don't have an answer to what you would have done differently in what was clearly a fairly failed administration with it, then like, what are you doing here? Yeah. If you can't do 15, 20 minutes with Bret Baier on Fox News, how are you going to do against Putin? How are you going to do against Xi? And it was just very telling for me. So, and I think it was very telling for the American people. They saw that. We're like, why can't she do this? She's been asked that question. She didn't do many interviews. She hid from that and just sort of allowed the mainstream media narrative to create a caricature of her that didn't exist, that she was great and competent and so impressive. But every time she got behind a podium or got in an interview, even a non-hostile interview, she almost ended her political career on The View. Like, imagine being like a leftist, like going on The View. It's like how much more home team can it get than that?
For real.
And she still couldn't get it right. I think everyone just saw that in front of them. We're like, okay, like we've come to our sense.
Absolutely.
Wherever you guys are watching this show, I would truly appreciate it if you follow or subscribe. It helps a lot with the algorithm. It helps us get bigger and better guests, and it helps us grow the team. Truly means a lot. Thank you guys for supporting, and here's the episode.